Hello, my name is Lise Colucci, and I am one of the life coaches at queenbeing.com, where we help you to discover, understand, and overcome narcissistic abuse in toxic relationships. Hello, Belle. Hello, everyone. So today, let's talk a little bit about the narcissist and abandonment issues. I think I'm lagging again. It's going to just do this until I figure this out. So we'll just wait a second. Hi, I hope you're well too. I am well. It is really hot here, so I'm a little... I'm sure it's hot all over the place. I shouldn't complain, but we're not used to it. Anyway, I'm just letting this lag stop because it looks weird. As soon as that stops, I'll get going. This is what I'm going to have to do. Figure it out. Hello, Michael John. Yeah, it's just a little laggy. It'll stop in just a second. I do not know what's going on. I need to in, I think. So it's the way it goes. There we are. Hey. Okay, so let's start this. Let's talk today about narcissists and abandonment issues. When the narcissist has abandonment issues and the supply or the survivor, however you want to word it, when you have abandonment issues too. So when you're with a narcissist and you have abandonment issues of your own and the narcissist has them as well from their traumas in their past, what's that look like? And how does that affect the way things are? So let's see. Hi, Michael and Belle. Let's see. Every day is weird because it doesn't happen here. Happens every day. I don't know. All right, let's get going. So, a narcissist and their fear of abandonment and what that look like and how is it different? Hi, Fancy. Oh, the lagging. Yeah, is it stopped now? I hope it stopped because it stopped on my end. So, it seems to last about 30 seconds. And I should just make up some little song and sing it while I lag. I don't know. I don't know what to do. All right. So basically, especially, this is really clear when you're dealing with a vulnerable, covert narcissist, or at least it's my experience of dealing with one, and I've heard it from lots of other people. When you're dealing with a very vulnerable, covert narcissist, they're the type that will cling to you and push you away at the same time, right? And they fear abandonment. They fear abandonment probably because they've had it in their past. Sometimes they'll even let you know they've had abandonment or abandonment to a child can look like neglect. It can look like abuse. It can look like anything where the child is emotionally left alone to fend for itself. Doesn't necessarily mean they were physically abandoned, but sometimes it's that too. So yeah, that can happen to anyone, right? Narcissist or not, and it does. And many times as survivors and as empaths, we are empathizing with that part of the narcissist who also has this same issue. And we are trying to connect in that place. Does that make sense? Like we're trying to connect through the empathy we feel and the compassion and the sympathy we feel because we have the same wounds. And we think that because we have the same wounds often that it's something that can be worked through because the narcissist is telling you they have these wounds or they're very clear about their abandonment issues, or maybe they're not clear, but you can see it. And so you see it as potential because the point is you're working on healing yourself or you're trying to, and they're not, right? But we think they are. So, so that can play to you. So basically the narcissist, when they are vulnerable in that way and understanding that they cannot take accountability and that they have no empathy, right? Understanding those two things means that when they are seeking supply, they're looking for someone who either shares that issue or will trigger that issue because as we heal, we put ourselves up against things that bring up our traumas. I think most people do this. And when we do it with someone who's a narcissist, you're not doing nothing but, I'm going to talk more about this, but you're doing nothing but repeat the trauma, right? Well, but a narcissist will do the same thing. They'll find people who push their buttons because that's a form of supply. You see, it gives them the feeling both of having someone that can make them feel abandoned and can give them the supply that that person will never leave because they're so afraid of being abandoned. Does that make sense? Am I making sense? This is like, it's really twisted up and I lived it. So it's really hard to talk about without getting my head mixed up here. Okay. So they'll play to your vulnerabilities. When they meet you, when they're grooming you in the beginning, they'll play to your vulnerabilities. They'll figure out what it is that you've got going on. And if you have a fear of abandonment and they have a fear of abandonment, then it fits perfect in this situation because, well, number one, it's like a time bomb, right? It's waiting. At first, it can feel like they really get you and they understand, right? It can feel like they are, on the same boat, they're on the same page, they've lived through it, so they wouldn't really, like, if I have abandonment issues, I would not want to abandon someone because I know what that feels like, right? So we think that's safe. But really what happens is it's this horrible time bomb where they then use it to do stuff we'll talk about in a minute and push you away. So basically they like watching you be triggered into your own abandonment issues because they have the same issues. So instead of dealing with it themselves and taking accountability and working through their own issues, they push it onto someone else and project it and watch the other person squirm. And through that, they're basically just fueling their own cycle of the negative positive that they need to feel. They need that. They need it. That's supply. Okay. And some way it can look is like that push pull when they know you have struggles with people who push pull, right? Or the clinging and then the shoving you away type of thing. It is gross. I know it is. It's like, well, I think because a lot of them are sadistic and a lot of them, they get a charge of other people's pain, right? And if that pain's close to their own, imagine the charge. It'd be enormous. And they may act like they don't like drama. What they'll do is they'll flip the scene. They'll flip the story, so they'll push you away and then they'll flip the story to make it look like you pushed them away or you drove them to it. Right? Yeah, I have so much I could say about this because I lived this for a long time with someone. And yeah. Okay. So we know they lack self-awareness and that self-awareness can't penetrate deep enough to affect any change. So they may be aware that they have abandonment issues and that can sound like self-awareness, right? Because that's what it would be with you because you're going, okay, I have this issue. What do I do about it? How do I fix it? And, what are my triggers? How do I, heal those triggers, whatever. So, but to them, I have abandonment, therefore the world or whoever's in my life owes me never abandoning me. However, I'm going to push them to the point where they want to, or I'm going to push them away so they feel abandoned, and then they'll cling to me and they'll never leave. You see how it works? That's how I witnessed it working. But the change can't get deep enough in them, no matter how aware they are of their own issues, to actually, or the understanding can't be deep enough for them to have any change because they lack empathy and they lack accountability. That's one of the major two issues of or diagnostic criteria with narcissistic personality disorder. So, and what they do is they use you as a mirror. Okay, so they're using you as a mirror to witness their own abandonment over and over and over. It's like, I think of it similar to the way our thought loops happen when we can't stop perseverating on an issue. And we're like torturing ourselves with something that's going round and round and round in our head. And we feels like we can't stop it. Only they're intentionally doing that to someone else. They're using someone else as a mirror for their own pain. And by creating it, it's like the bullying thing where if someone is bullied, then they bully back. It's that kind of thing where it's a very immature and lacking in self-awareness way of coping with their own issues of abandonment. All right. So they will push your triggers. They will create situations that set it up so you're triggered constantly. Tiny, tiny microscopic things over and over all day long, every second. Like they may Oh, well, let's say they may, well, I'll go to the next one. They won't commit, but they cling. Okay. Belle is saying, wow, you hit the nail on the head. I feel that happening all the time, but it's so difficult to describe. And they have no self-awareness. So what do? We get out, we get away. There's nothing we can do to change these people. There's nothing you can do to change anyone. Okay. I can't change you, even though if you want me to. I wish I could, but I can't, you know what I mean? Like you can't change someone else, right? And someone who has no self-awareness and no ability to change because they lack empathy and they lack accountability to oneself and to other people, then mostly to oneself, then it's really a matter of getting yourself safe at that point and looking at your own abandonment issues if you have them too, and realizing that being away from the toxic person who is doing this to you and is perpetuating your pain is not abandonment. That's freedom. Okay. It's changing your mindset about being alone so that you can be alone. All right. So basically what I was going to say is they don't commit, but they cling. You know what I'm talking about? Like they will, maybe one won't get married. Okay. And you really want to get married, or won't live with you, but you really think, but you've been together 10 years or whatever. Right. But they cling to you and they spread their life all over your home. In other words, there's pieces of them everywhere, all over the place, as if they live there, as if they're part of the house, but they don't actually participate within the household in a way that's meaningful. They might do a thing or two here and there to look okay and to feel okay about themselves, but they don't really do that. And so basically what they're doing is giving you what you long for, which is the companionship and the partnership, but they're not giving it fully, or they're only giving it a piece of it. And then they pull it away by saying, no, I won't participate. I won't actually engage in this fully. Does that make sense? That's a really painful one because it leaves you struggling, trying to fix it over and over and over, and trying to give them what they need while you're getting what you need. But it's such a vastly different need for the same issue. Does that make sense? Okay. So, I said this a bit. They take over your life, but won't participate fully in it, right? They take over all aspects of your life. I feel like they're like there's this web of sticky, there's these plants that stick to you and walk by and you can't, and when you pull them off, the cleavers, that's what they are. You pull them off and then they stick somewhere else, and then you pull them off there and they leave little burrs that stick on you, and then you've got them on your hand, and then there's stickiness on the plant. I feel like they just do that all over your life. Like the more you try to, as you notice it, or maybe in the beginning when it feels like too much, as you try to pull them off of one place, they attach somewhere else, and they just send their blood-sucking, parts into every aspect of your life. But they don't fully commit to anything that is real within the relationship. I think if you've lived that, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so no accountability means no change. And what it leads to is projection. They can't have accountability. So instead of, if they do something like, let's say they don't show up for something they're supposed to show up to, or they show up late, which leaves you feeling abandoned because you have your own issues with it and you're triggered, and you say, hey, that's not okay to just not show up like that. I need you to text me or let me know what's going on. I feel really abandoned or whatever. They'll push it back and project all over you how clingy and needy you are, when in fact they set that up deliberately to get that response. Probably because they have their own fear of that. Now, you just go do one little thing. You just do one thing, like show up 10 minutes late, or maybe forget to text when you said you would, just something simple, but then, catch it and text a bit later, or whatever it is. You do that and it's the end of the world, right? You've just completely offended them. And then they'll either punish you with silence or whatever they do, but not good. So basically they project back when they I think what happens is when they feel moments where accountability should be taking over, when they feel like, oh, I should really be taking care of myself, my own emotions right now, that's when they project. And it can come at any time because, they're living their life too and going through their day. So exactly. But he could be late every time. Yep. And it really does. If you have abandonment issues, that really makes you feel alone and abandoned, and they know it. I think they know it. I don't know that they know it as like, I'm deliberately going to do that, but there's some mechanism in them that needs that. Does that make sense? So yes. So even though they act like it's their place, heaven forbid you ask them to help you hang a heavy picture. Infuriating. Exactly. Things like that. Or anything, just be present. Just not check out, just, okay. So the issue with the projection, here's the issue with this kind of projection. When they're projecting stuff on you that's totally bogus, when it's like projecting you cheating when you've never even looked at someone else, you know what I mean? Like when they're projecting the things that they do onto you, that's totally nonsense. It has this feeling, at least to me, of injustice, and it's infuriating, and you want to argue with it because it's wrong. You just feel like that's completely wrong. What are you talking about? And, you engage with it because you're not thinking, oh, I should be gray rocking, right? And especially when you don't know what's going on. So when they're projecting in this way on something that is actually an issue for you, it feels real. So when they say, you're so clingy, or you're so, what's the matter with you? You're, you don't give me any space, la, 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 whatever they're saying to you, you can see the truth in it because you've got this issue, and that people who have abandonment issues have certain traits, and that you probably do those things. However, the relationship is set up on a form of dependency where those things are normal. So the clinging that you might do back, if you do it, if that's I'm just saying clinging, it could be any trait that you have that comes from your abandonment issues. Any of that, it's all set up within the relationship to be normal because they need you. Like, I'm just going to use clinging. They need you to cling. They need you to be, worrying where they are, checking up on them, in constant contact. They need that. Okay, so they set that up, but then when it serves them and they feel like projecting, or they have the need to project because they can't be accountable to themselves for whatever they're going through, they say it to you. They say whatever the thing is, you're too clingy, or why are you checking up on me, or whatever, you've really got issues with abandonment. What do you think? Blah, 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 whatever. They're projecting it on you. Instead of feeling that injustice, you feel like they're right. They're right. And honestly, they kind of are, because we do those things because the relationship's set up that way. So if we take that and go, oh, okay, so I'm not going to do that anymore. And then it changes everything. And then the relationship then it becomes a matter of gray rocking all the time. So you see what I'm saying? Is actually, they're projecting something that's actually real to you back at you, but it's also a projection because it's their issue too, and they're doing it to hurt you. Is that making sense? Yeah. Okay. I don't know. Let's see. Okay. So when you're in a situation like this where you both have abandonment issues, you're basically in a constant state of living and reliving your initial trauma of abandonment over and over and over and over and over. And it doesn't stop because it can't stop. If you are with someone who is, excuse me, I have to cough. Okay. Oh goodness. The pollens are ridiculously high and I'm going to lose my voice. Okay. So if you're with someone who is not a narcissist and they have abandonment issues and you have abandonment issues, it's still difficult. Okay. When you have matching major issues like that, it's very difficult because you are going to constantly trigger someone and they're going to constantly trigger you. However, when you're with someone or have a friend or whatever with the similar issues and they're working on healing themselves and they're working on evolving and growing and changing their life, they are not putting their issues upon you. It happens, yes, but it happens, it's talked about, it's resolved, right? When you're with so hopefully that's what you're doing with your life. If you do have abandonment issues, is that you're continuing to work on your issues, and you're realizing now that you're in a relationship that's triggering abandonment issues. Every single narcissistic relationship, I would say, triggers abandonment issues if you have them. Even if the narcissist doesn't have this as their particular issue, it's narcissistic abuse is a major form of abandonment. They can't emotionally be available to you. So they're abandoning you just by being around you. Okay. So know that you are in a constant triggering of your own trauma, and it can't work with them because you may notice it and go, oh, okay, I got to fix that, and start working on yourself and start learning to love yourself and realize that you can never be abandoned because you always have you. You know what I mean? Like, you always, once you learn to have your own back, you always have your own back. And therefore no one can abandon you. You're right there. You're right there with yourself. And there is no such thing as abandonment anymore. But that takes, steps to get there. And when you're in the middle of these toxic relationships, it can feel like that's totally impossible, or you're like, I'm crazy and you don't know what I'm talking about right now. Okay. So if you're constantly being triggered and you're with someone who cannot evolve, that person is never going to stop projecting. And that narcissist will always need to feel their own pain from this, and then retreat from that pain through pushing it off onto you. That's supply. And they need that supply. They will need it forever. That's their form of abuse. That's their form of gaining supply, at least in this aspect. Okay. Hi, Butterfly Mama. Okay. And Cadred. Okay, so let's keep going. Why does this happen to narcissistic people when they're little, when they're children, and they have, one reason is, okay, when they're children and they have abandonment. And like I said, abandonment can be physical abandonment, or it can be neglect or abuse, or a lack of security, emotional security, with a child who already has predisposition for narcissistic personality disorder. In other words, they're probably children with very low empathy. And, I don't know all the reasons why people become narcissists. I think that part of this is I think still such a mystery to everyone, that I kind of focus more on what happens rather than why it happened. But the point is that it brings up, it creates shame in the child. It creates shame, and that shame in someone who becomes an empath, someone who is an empath, or someone who has empathy, that shame, we all get it, right? We all get the shame from the abandonment. But the shame in someone who has the ability to be self-aware and has empathy becomes a form of self-sabotage. Right? I mean, it's self-sabotage for both, but it doesn't necessarily project out onto other people quite the same way as it does with a narcissist. With a narcissist, they have to blame. They have to blame everyone for the way they're feeling at any moment. Instead of going back, for instance, you might have something where you realize you're projecting onto a friend because they had to cancel on you, and you get mad at them or whatever, you pout, whatever it is, and you project, and then you catch it and you go, oh, that was pretty immature, I better fix that. And you fix it, or you don't, or whatever you do, but you realize it and you catch it and you say, okay, I can't be projecting this. This isn't abandonment. They're just busy. You logically work your way through it. The narcissist will blame. They'll blame. And if they don't blame the person it happened to, they'll turn to their main supply and they'll blame them. So you don't know what's going on in their day where abandonment's being triggered, but they'll bring it back to you and push it back on you in the form of blame. So that's what happens. Not fun. And I mean, it all comes back to no accountability or empathy, because that person does not have the ability to have empathy. And they do not, because of that, have no accountability toward their own emotional states. That's what they do. They can only blame and push and project. So, and set up situations to recreate the trauma, both theirs and yours, over and over. So get out. That's what you do. You get away. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Oh, so the other thing with why a narcissist does something like this is when they feel their wound, when they feel the trigger to their wound and their abandonment, instead of feeling it, they need to avoid it. It's a highly avoidant personality type, personality disorder. They're avoidant people. They shut down, they go silent, they project, all the things I was talking about. So, anybody has questions on this or want to talk, go for it. I'm almost at the end here. So, or if you have something else you want to talk about, I will stop monologuing and let you ask anything you need. So, understand that within this abandonment topic, the ultimate weapon is a silent treatment. It's the ultimate form of abandoning someone right in their face, right? So when they're doing that to you, understand that they're just, it's totally abusive. It's not acceptable, and that's what's happening. Okay. So the silence and the stonewalling, let's talk about how it affects the survivor as a person who also has abandonment issues, and how it looks for you and how it affects you, and maybe what you can do about it. I didn't write a lot of that down, but we will see if whatever comes out my mouth or if you guys have something. So the silence and the stonewalling that they do, that comes from the abandonment topic, it feels like you're not seen. It feels like you are completely unseen and you're left alone. And I don't know about you, but it brings me to a state of feeling like a tiny child with no voice and no ability to take care of itself, and fearful. It brings about ultimate fear, especially when it's around something where you think they're going to leave you. Right? Hi, Vicky. And, like I said, we keep trying to heal, and they keep opening the wound. So when this is a really toxic setup to have a narcissist with major abandonment issues and a survivor with some major abandonment issues, because they will continually open that wound for you over and over forever. So it's really important to recognize when they're doing it. If you can't get out now, recognize what's happening so that you can create some distance between your own wound and their childish projections and their, immature emotional state and your own need to heal. When you're constantly ignored, Belle says, when you're constantly ignored and not allowed to speak, it makes you feel horrible. What techniques help you feel better? Your description of how you feel is exactly how I feel. Well, short of getting away from it, getting away from it's the answer, right? We know this. But if you can't, like I said, understanding what's happening at the time, that if you understand that the silent treatment is firing neurons in your brain in the pain center, where you feel physical pain, that's the area of your brain that lights up when you get the silent treatment. You can go, there's articles on it. You can go look that up. And if understanding that, don't telling them that you're hurting me because it's, making my brain do this, doesn't do a darn thing. They'll just do it again. Or they like it, or they don't care. But no, understanding it for yourself means that you can at least be aware of what's happening, so that you can see, oh, this is how it's supposed to feel when someone gives me the silent treatment. It's not supposed to feel good. This is how this is how it feels. And step away, get away from the situation, walk away, go outside, get on with your day. Ignore the silent treatment, use it as a vacation from their never-ending nonsense that comes out of their mouth, and step away. You wanted to thank me for my comments Tuesday. Had a great session with my counselor and woke up yesterday out of the fog and funk. Yes! Like an adult instead of a wounded 3-year-old child. Ha ha! I love it. Good. Excellent. I'm so glad that you had that session right then. That was perfect. And that was useful. Excellent. All right. So, okay. So, what was I saying? Oh, they also do this to control you. Okay. They don't, if a narcissist has an abandonment issue, then they fear being left alone, right? I know that the one I dealt with couldn't be alone at all. Claimed that he needed to be alone, but he couldn't be alone, could not be alone. It was pain for him to be alone. And, that's why they move on within hours. If they haven't moved on before they leave you, if, best case scenario is they wait 30 seconds before after discard. That's, but that's part of it, that they can't be alone. Number one, they need the other person's worship and adoration in order to feel their own worth, or in order to feel like they have worth, beyond the point of codependency, to the point where it's egotistical and, it's not about their inner worth. It's about how good I am. And, it's swaggering, right? So they need that. But if they have abandonment issues too, it does go way deeper. It goes to them needing somebody else to tell them that they exist and that they're okay. And yeah. And so you can see with someone with no empathy and someone with the constant need to only take care of self, that would be a setup for them to need to control you through triggering your own abandonment issues. Because if they make you feel so insecure that they might walk out any second, then you're going to do everything you can to make sure that they're happy. And they understand it. This is the thing. They can sympathize. Okay. This is actually, I just thought of this. So they don't have empathy. We know this. So they can't look at you when you're crying about something and empathize with you and feel with you, right? They can't. However, if it's a situation that they understand for themselves, they can sympathize in a very self-directed way, a very self-pointed way. So when they are triggering your abandonment, they know darn well what they're doing. And because they feel it themselves. Does that make sense? So this is a case where it's not empathy, absolutely not empathy. What it is like an understanding based on their own experience. And so they don't sympathize in the way where they want to make you feel better. They get it. They get it deeply. They understand. But they don't want to help you through it as much as they say they might. And a vulnerable narcissist and an altruistic one will tell you how much they don't want to hurt you. And they understand you have these abandonment issues and they want you to feel safe and secure. But then they do everything in their power to make you feel like you don't have any safety within the relationship. And it is 100% about control so that you don't walk away from them. Okay. And that way they always have their supply and they always have somebody that will have their, it's not even have their back, that will basically protect them from themselves, right? Okay, my narcissist is such a jerk, says Vicky. Nobody wanted to be around him, but he claimed he couldn't stand being alone and was lonely all the time. Yep. Then he'd get drunk and feel sorry for himself and down a bunch of pills. Sounds pleasant. Yeah, and you see that cycle, and there's nothing to do about it. Just this is the life they live. My ex threatened to divorce me for years. I reached a point where I didn't care anymore. And that's the point you need to get to. And if you have your own abandonment issues and you can get to that point, it's freedom, right? That indifference. Maybe it's seeing it over and over and over. Maybe it's seeing the patterns. I think Belle asked a question earlier, how do you deal with it not hurting? Seeing patterns over and over and over becomes so tiresome and boring and contrived, really, that at a certain point, what would happen? I would see he would go into his stony face stare. I mean, I can't do it, but he would go into his stony face stare and his glare when I didn't do something that he approved of, which was pretty minor. Like maybe I said a word that was not the correct, perfect word. And then in order to set up the abandonment cycle for me, he would go into the silent treatment by turning his back just enough where I could see the side of his face. So you can still see that he's there. And And it went on. It was like this whole dance that he would do, right? This whole ritual of the way the silent treatment would come on. At a certain point, it was like visualizing, and I don't visualize, so I kind of had to have a mental image of it, or it was more of a thought in my head of basically, a child putting its thumb in its mouth every time he did it. It started to look ridiculous, and the indifference kicked in. So mine would threaten to kill himself if I left, or tell me if I did, I'd be a street person. You see how the clinging happens? You see how desperate it sounds when you just write one sentence about it? That's so not healthy, right? And you can see that it's not even remotely a healthy way to be with someone. Yeah, that crazy stare, you know that one. And it's right before they turn and go silent. And I loved how he would turn just enough where it was like this profile of just like the back of his head plus a little bit of so I could still see that there was a facial expression there going on of complete disapproval. When you see how set up it is and how routine and how exactly the same, that's when the indifference, because you see it as, it's almost like an ingenuine reaction because it happens the same every single time, right? Okay, so, another thing that can happen is if you bring up the issue, and if you bring up any problem around this, or if you say, wow, I'm really feeling like abandoned in this, I'm really feeling alone in this relationship. And I talked about loneliness the other day. This is kind of goes hand in hand with it. But if you bring it up, they will play the victim sometimes, especially the vulnerable narcissist who's had abandonment in their life. They will instantly turn the tables and play the victim as if you're hurting them by the mere mention of it. So yeah, that's and see, projection equals re-injury. Remember that every time they're projecting the same issue that you have, if you have abandonment issues, they have abandonment issues. Every time they're projecting that back onto you, it is re-injuring you back to your own initial trauma. So it's like the ultimate setup for the PTSD that we probably all have, right? But it's the ultimate re-injury. And what that does is it reinforces a belief system that you had set up when you're a child. So when you're a child and you've had abandonment, it creates a belief system. Every experience we have is what creates our belief systems about ourselves and about the world around us, right? So that's the programming. We're all an influence of the programming that we've experienced in our life. And that's why we have to step up and reprogram ourselves, literally reprogram ourselves. So if you have this cycle going on, or what I want to say is that so that when you're as a child, you have painful experiences, like deeply painful, wounding experiences that create trauma, it also creates a belief system in yourself. Maybe it's nobody loves me. Maybe it's I'm unlovable. Maybe it's I'm just making some stuff up. Like for abandonment can be all kinds of things. I'm invisible. I don't belong. I don't have a place in this world. It can create all kinds of beliefs, right? And so every time they project onto you, it's popping a button and making that belief light up. So you can see how it just reinforces and wears you down. And it also probably does the same thing for them, but then what happens is they get more intense with it. I noticed that the more close he got, the longer we were together, the worse this part was. The more he felt I was there for keeps, the worse this became. And I think it's because of what I just said. So, okay. Let's see. Oh, they abandon my last point here was that they will abandon you in times of need, or they'll show up greatly in times of need and then abandon you right after. So you might have something happen where you really need someone, and they're right there. And they're right there giving you everything. It's a form of love bombing through this wound. And they will maybe there's an illness in the family or some event that you really need someone, and they'll be there. They'll be there right at your side. They'll be doing everything you need. within hours to weeks, sometimes short. It's not long. They will completely shut down, or they'll have a temper tantrum because they didn't get the attention they needed, or it was just too much giving. And it's not real giving, as you know, it's just love bombing, and that can only be held up for so long, and then they got to crash and burn and devalue you. So that's another way that this can really affect you, because it's when you needed them, they're there, and then they're gone after or during, sometimes during, in the middle of it. And I mean, you can imagine what that does to the feelings of abandonment. Or a holiday, a birthday, whatever, an event. And most people who aren't narcissists would step up and be there and be present with you and, hang out or whatever, do something for you. And they abandon you in those moments. So you see, when there's already good setup, they don't need to love bomb you, and they can just walk away and do the other side. Oh, this is a really complex piece, isn't it? How they use the forms of abuse that they do within something that is their own issue, and knowing it's yours. Okay. So Fancy says, absolutely. When I told my ex I was having suicidal ideation, he needed to change our situation. His response was, well, I'm not happy either. Exactly the point, right? Couldn't validate my feelings, just one up them always. They're always doing that. And especially when you've been with them long enough where the mask is off, or it's fairly well off. Yeah. Belle says, another question, is part of the rejection refusing to look into your eyes or even in your direction unless screaming at you? Yes. Or talking. Like he would say to me, I'm not a very verbose person. I don't have a lot to say. I don't express myself a lot. He would very clearly say, when we're having a conversation that had any depth or meaning to me, it would be minimal. If he had a point to make that was negative, the man could talk for an hour straight, right? Looking me straight in the eyes. If I'm talking to him and and if I was talking to him and I needed what anyone needs, which is connection and somebody to talk back with, somebody to converse with, then it would be exactly like you said, refusing to look in my eyes or even in my direction. So yeah, that is totally part of the abandonment. It triggers your feelings of abandonment, and I think for them, it gives them the power to trigger that so that they don't have to feel their own. Having power over someone where you have pain, imagine how powerful that is. It's sick, but it's true. Okay. Total epiphany. Which was the epiphany, Michael? Fancy. Yes, that's the time to leave. I left soon after I wanted to die. Yeah, it is the time to, it's beyond the time to leave, right? Sweet Pink, hello. That one-upping is the absolute worst. It's like, it's already hard enough for me to come and tell you that this is the issue. Please just hear it. Not feeling heard, and that's what I was saying. It can leave you feeling invisible. And what is more abandoning is if you have abandonment issues than the feeling of being invisible when you need someone the most. When all you need is to be heard. You don't even need them to fix it. You just need to, I hear you. Wow, that, you need empathy. And we're asking for empathy from someone who can't have empathy. It's not going to happen, right? But the one-upping just makes it worse. My mother would say often, Sweet Pink says, that yes, she feels her own grief, and if it's overwhelming, but she also feels the grief that me and my sister had to go through on top of hers as well, because it's similar, because she created a situation that's similar grief, so she can sympathize. It's not empathy. She can co-understand. That's kind of how I look at it. It's not even sympathy, because we think of sympathy as, oh, I'm sorry, or wow, that must be hard. And in fact, that's what he would say to me. That must be hard, because he learned to use words of sympathy, but it's not real sympathy. It's a co-understanding of, of a problem that they've created. So if it's your mother, she created the situation for you to mimic her own, is my opinion. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but because I don't know the situation, but sounds like that's probably what happened. fancy. Oh, okay. You're talking to Denise. Michael says she was there for certain things, and I always thought that she was there because I told you that you said they walk away afterwards, probably when you need them the most. Oh yeah, that's that part. Yeah. I understand speech to text. I'm like, I can kind of read that. It's okay. It's okay. I do it all the time. All right, you guys, anything you want to talk about in the next few minutes here before I have to go? Actually, I have to end in 3 minutes because I have an appointment. So, okay, this was a good topic, I think. I hope it brought some light to this particular issue. And it's not just this issue. You can apply this to any issue that you have that is a core wound that you have that the narcissist always also has. This is the cycle of what I see them doing. And this is if you apply any of the manipulation techniques to it, you can pretty much plug in any core wound and there you go. So, okay, you guys. So, go ahead if you have not already and you wish to get text notifications of when I am live. It is text to 33222 Lise Live, LISELIVE, all one word. And you will be sent text notifications about 10 minutes prior to me going live. If you have not hit the subscribe button and you enjoyed this or this was useful to you, hit subscribe. I come on minimally twice a week. I'm aiming for every day soon. So here we go. I'm not going to promise, but I'm aiming for it. Trying to work the schedule, but it is summertime, so we'll see. Any topics that you want talked about, please leave me comments or contact me. I always have my contact information in the main part of the description for, actually, I didn't do it today. I'll have to do that later for the live streams. I leave these up so you can watch them later. And if you have not hit the like button, please do so. And I will see you guys next time. I wish you the best for your healing, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.